on to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today are life coaches Cindy Chavez and Jackie Gates. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And I'm especially glad to be inside on a very cold day here in the Northeast. I imagine, Jackie, you got something similar going on in Minnesota. It's raw. It's that kind of a raw day where, no, thank you.
We're not so bad. We're at 48 degrees. So it's and sun shining. It's kind of toasty by comparison.
So, by comparison? Yeah.
Yes.
What is it for you, Walt?
I think we actually did reach the 40s today, but it's that humid kind of cold. The dry cold is one thing. Dry cold just is cold. Humid cold is like, oh, it feels like
it's all damp.
Yeah. Bone chilling. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when the wind is cold. We walked to the grocery store the other day and the wind goes straight through everything you're wearing down to your bone marrow. It's just like, oh. So, and that's when I get grumpy, like within 3 steps, and I'm cross. And like, are you sure we can't starve? Do we have to?
Do you want to know?
Now I'm halfway there. Yeah, no, and it's just, and it's really, I mean, I can see the store from my balcony, so it's not that far, but it's far enough when it's cold like that. So.
Well, at some point, you ask yourself, is food really a necessity?
Yes, really. Right. Yeah. I did buy myself because now I'm invested in being here. It's so interesting when you stop resisting where you are. Right. And so the last time we were up in Minnesota, I had in my head it was temporary. I was just here to welcome the grandbabies, and then I was going back south where it's warm. And so consequently, I did 2 winters with not a good enough coat. And a lot of the things that I could have invested in because I'm not staying, which worked really well when I actually was going to move. But then when, it made for a miserable winter. And so now this time it's like, okay, we're going to choose to be here because this is where the grandbabies are. And we'll jet off and do the snowbird thing maybe in February. But in the meantime, we're going to need a new coat. So I bought one that has those poofy things. So I look rather like the Pillsbury Doughman, only like with blonde hair. But I don't care. I feel glamorous enough, sort of in a snow bunny sort of poofy way. But it has made the world of difference. Now I just complain that my mascara freezes and my lip gloss. But it has made the world of difference. And it's so interesting because it was that thought that allowed me to invest in where I am and consequently made where I am less necessary to resist, which was a very interesting thing because last time I resisted being here. So I didn't invest in anything that made it easier to be here. And I did leave. So in that way, it was successful. But this time, I'm noticing that the tenor of my days is less grumpy, for want of a better word. I'm not resisting the weather because I'm invested in making it work, being here. So it's an interesting, your thoughts can't change the weather, but they can sure as hell change how you feel about it.
Yeah. I like that whole train of thought because resistance always makes everything harder, but this is like you're explaining when you can really look back and realize how that worked. It's like you were resisting being there. And I have a similar thing that in the weather thing here, it's 75 degrees today.
Stop it.
And we get like 2 weeks of winter if we get winter. And it's always like, I start looking at coats and I'm like, I don't want to spend $300 on a coat.
No.
In 10 days, it'll be 70 degrees again. So I never do it. So consequently, every winter I go through that instead of just making the decision. I'm not trying to leave. So, but yeah, that's really interesting how that.
And it's so interesting because I do this when I coach clients who come to me and say, I don't feel at home where I am. And invariably, it's because, for example, they're in a rental and they feel temporary, or they know they're not going to stay, so they don't invest any time or energy. Those two being the key, because you don't actually have to spend any money if you don't want to, but time and energy in making it feel like home, because they've decided it can't.
Yeah.
And so I had decided I cannot be happy in cold weather. And I'm slowly but surely untangling that, because, yeah, the general happiness quotient of my days requires me to untangle that. I can, I do not want to be in a foul mood from September through March, actually in Minneapolis through April, because we get snow in April. Anyhow, don't get me started. But it is this. It is this decision about how you are going to show up for the immovables of your life, right? And part of, we had this discussion, Walt, with, when we deal with a catastrophe, when we deal with some kind of weather thing, weather being a big deal, and not easily changed by thoughts. But housing is another thing. We have circumstances, things that happen, life happens, and you can end up in a place where you aren't 100% happy. You wish you weren't, I would love to have a separate office, for example. But in the meantime, I'm loving the space I have, because I know that loving the space I have will lead me to more space to love. So this is where, it is, we have to claim our power, but we also have to claim where we are most powerful. I can resist the cold weather all I like, and winter in Minnesota is still going to be ridiculous. Or I can decide that I'm going to look fabulous in my poofy coat and set myself up accordingly, right? Waterproof mascara and eyelashes that don't freeze together, things like that. So it is this idea that our thoughts are, you don't always have to change the circumstance. You can just change what you think about it.
Yeah, because most often, or much of the time, you can't change the circumstance, especially the ones that are really bothering you. That's why they bother us, because we don't think that we can change them. And yet changing how we feel about them and think about them, that's often the thing that causes the shift where the circumstance can change, right?
Right, exactly, because what we resist persists. And if we keep resisting it, well, let's put it this way. I don't think we're going to hit 70 degrees in December in Minnesota anytime soon. But I can still feel fabulous and not be grumpy and all those things. So, and then who's to say that I don't suddenly win the lottery and get a chance to be a snowbird for 3 months of a year instead of 1 month, right? I mean, these are the random ways that what we want show up. But when we're so busy resisting what is, we don't give those opportunities a chance to show up.
Yeah, that's really true. Although I have to admit, I'm still sitting here, I'm kind of imagining frozen mascara. I hadn't considered that one before.
Well, to be honest, Walt, dear, I don't think it's anything that's in your current reality that you need to worry about.
Probably not. No.
But there is, I mean, we've had, not that you wear mascara every day, but it is, we were here 3-4 years ago when we had the polar vortex, and we had 3 days of minus 50 wind chills. And you stepped outside, and the first breath you took in, all your nose hairs freeze and your tear ducts freeze. And so any moisture will freeze. And
it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get, and they will, Minnesota's really good about that. I'm sure a lot of the other northern states are, where they will warn you and say 3 minutes and you will have frostbite. 2 minutes, frostbite. Don't go outside. It is this, when we had that, they canceled all deliveries. They canceled everybody that didn't need to be outside except for
That's amazing. That's such a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you were talking to me during this. We were talking on the phone, and you were by your balcony door.
Yes.
And you were like, you opened it for like 1 second. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, because I was doing offerings to the spirits of place, and it was like I opened the door and I shoved the incense out and I closed it and I said, you guys have to understand.
That's the first time I realized when you were like, no, because they're making warnings that you can't even go out for like 30 seconds and you'll be in trouble. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I can't even
Yeah,
imagine.
any uncovered skin. Yeah, it was surreal. So I don't think we'll have that again. But I will tell you that my mood is a whole lot better, and I have a coat for it now. So that's
That's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing, because
Yeah,
now all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to handle that process of
right.
changing when you think about it.
Yeah.
When you're cold, that's a hard thing to do. When you're warmer, it's like, oh, well, I can handle this. This is easier.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there will still be the joggers outside. You know, it's minus something, and there are several joggers that go along the Mississippi River, and they have icicles hanging from their balaclavas where they breathe. They look like that octopus person from Pirates of the Caribbean. It's it is the most surreal thing, and it's like I really want to get fit, but I don't want to get that fit. I used to think, no, I admire their devotion so much. And
I
they're
want to get fit, but I don't want to get pneumonia.
but they don't. It's the most, because there again, their thoughts influence their experience. They are there to do their long distance running, to do their ultra marathons or whatever it is that they're doing.
That's
And
amazing.
the thought is, their identity is, I am a runner, and the I am a runner doesn't matter what the weather is.
It's true.
It's very true. So I am a Minnesotan.
But what you're describing about runners running in all weather, I mean, I'm a walker and I get out and walking, even when it gets cold and snowy and so forth, but I'm bundled up for it. And then I see these guys out, like half dressed running. And you're right, they do it every day, so they're not getting sick. But even so, it makes me feel a whole lot smarter just seeing it.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Yes, I'm out to prove that you can be glamorous and dressed for the Arctic. I actually had a whole Facebook thread about this. It's like, is there such a thing as glamorous Arctic wear? As I mean, do we know of anybody that lives in the North Pole that looks stunning in what they wear? This is how I was playing with it, and it was so fun because I'm only 5 foot, so when you add 3 or 4 layers, then I start looking rather like a snowball, and it's but it is. But even that, the change is in my thoughts shows up in that I would not have even been that playful about the scenario, right? And you change what you think about something, and that thing you think about changes. So it's such an interesting play.
So is the way you think about yourself too, because when you can't really be playful and be glum at the same time. It doesn't really work.
No, that's true. Or grumpy. I've also tried that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to try, but it looks too ridiculous in some.
And I'm just figuring Shirley MacLaine. I was born in a bad mood. So,
right.
But it's so when people have what they see as intractable things, you change what you can change, and that's how you show up for stuff.
Yeah.
And when you do, you get fed more.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's what I love about how the universe works, how law of attraction works. That all I have to do is take some kind of step, make some sort of shift, change a behavior, change a pattern of some kind.
Buy a coat.
Buy a coat. Yeah, sure. And then all of a sudden, everything shifts. The whole experience starts to change, and I start getting new input that I didn't get before. It's kind of the same thing as between being low vibe and high vibe. When you're low vibe, high vibe seems impossible. When you're high vibe, low vibe seems, well, it's too bad. I'm sorry about that. It's not the same feeling at all. It's a completely different feeling.
And you can have two people experiencing exactly the same thing in completely different ways on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah. Which is pretty wild. Something I've been really paying attention to lately is I've been making it a point. Now, I've been doing a few things. Now that we're in the gardening off season, this is the time for me to start doing other things that I've been putting off, such as my daily routines, getting back into them, doing the mirror work, doing the appreciations, doing all the stuff I wasn't doing before. And it's a good thing, by the way. I'm liking doing that. One of the things that goes along with that is strong recognition, like I've never had before, about how important it is for me to wait until I'm into a positive, high vibe frame of mind before I make a decision of any kind. I don't care if it's as small as going to the kitchen. Any decision. Put them off until I'm feeling better. If I'm not feeling better, do what it takes to feel better. Because the experience is so dramatically different. Not just the immediate one, but what follows that one and what follows that one. It cascades. It turns into a whole series of experiences. And then new thing, that's how law of attraction works. All of a sudden, it starts delivering stuff that wasn't being delivered before. Because the mindset changed so much. So, yeah, I'm making a big deal out of that. And it's not like I'm not having times where I'm just feeling miserable. That I had one today, actually. Interesting thing. I know you guys both know that I have been in this TIA boot camp. I'm about ready to graduate. I'm on the last module. And one of the things that they want you to do in that last module is to set 3 intentions. And they can be whatever you want them to be. They kind of recommend, the way I describe it is it's like the easy one, the medium one, and the difficult one. And they recommend, make one about money or weight loss or something like that. Just, really go for it and see where you're at compared to when you start the program. So I set 3 intentions. My first one was super simple. It was the intention that I was going to do my my routine every day, which would be new. And it was one I could reach. It didn't require a whole lot of manifesting, but, I could do that. And so I've been doing that. The second one, that was my medium one. My medium one was we had 4 customers from the guarding service who I'd been trying to collect checks from. They hadn't paid their bill yet. I've been working on them for over a month, in one case, 2 months. And I said, you know what? I want to manifest having all 4 of them pay their bills by next Monday. This was this past Monday. Within 1 hour, 3 checks showed up. It was pretty darn cool.
Yeah. Now we're cooking.
And then I got a phone call from the 4th one. That was the one I've been trying to reach for a couple months. And that one at first turned into a really bad situation because I won't go into the whole story, but the bottom line is she was playing the role of the victim and implying that we had victimized her. But when I tried to pin her down, oh no, I'm not complaining. I'm not saying that you did anything, but I want you to pay for everything. It was that kind of a mentality. And I wasn't taking that too well, but I handled the call as professionally as I could and finally got her to commit to sending the check in and then spent another hour meditating to calm myself down because I went right down that spiral, but used my tools to climb back up, got to a better place. Okay, moved on. Today, we got the check in the mail, right? Except that she deducted another $200 that she thought she should take off. So one more time down the spiral, one more time, all that kind of thing. And then I realized, you know what? That's her. That's who she is. She's in a miserable place. I'm glad I'm not in that place. I'm certainly not going to stay down in that place because I don't want to join her down there. So I'm just write the rest off, not worry about it. And I'm going to consider this a victory because, hey, I got the 4 checks, didn't I? So
you did.
So I rode the roller coaster. But because I've been doing the routines, and item 1 was do the routines every day, I climbed right back out really quickly each time. So I consider that to be, okay, I've got 2 of the 3 down pat. All I got to do is
really
get cool. Now, the 3rd one's the really hard one. And I shouldn't say the hard one. It's the most aggressive one. Let's put it that way. Because that one, I've been playing Dan Mangaina's Money Game. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, Jackie. He wrote an ebook called The Money Game. And the gist of the ebook is you aim to attract very small amounts of money into your life. And then as you attract a small one, you up the ante by a small amount. And you keep upping the ante over and over and over again. Just attracting, fun money just out of the clear sky. And blue money. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm up to the $2,500 plateau at this point. I've been through like 7 levels of it so far. So I figured, well, okay, I've been waiting on the 2,500 level for about 6 months or so, something like that. So let's get that done, and let's make it really interesting. Let's get it done by December 15th. And if it doesn't happen, so what? No big deal. But I figured, I'm going to see if I can really apply and do the journaling and all the stuff they want us to do, and see how much I can actually get done for that goal of getting into that feeling place. So that's the last thing, and then I'll be graduating the program after that. But the point of all of this is to say, when I apply myself and do all these things like I promised myself I was going to do and follow through and get into that high vibe space, those times that I fall down, I don't stay there very long. I bounce right back up. And my whole experience really does shift. My whole experience changes dramatically. All because I chose to make some shifts in my thinking.
Yeah. Choose your thoughts, and your circumstances will change.
They do, and it's fun. I kind of like it a lot.
Yeah, especially when checks arrive in the mail.
Oh yes, I like that. Especially nowadays that we can deposit the checks virtually. You take a picture of the check with your phone.
Can you imagine? I'd like explaining. I imagine my father-in-law was a chartered accountant, and explain the fact that I could say to him, "You take a picture with your phone." Well, firstly, those two don't go together. So I pick up your phone, and your check is automatically deposited into your bank account. Right. It's just like, it's sci-fi. It's so cool. The era we live in is just so cool.
Very the Jetsons.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit, I don't do it strictly according to Hoyle. You're supposed to destroy the checks 60 days later or something like that. But I've been keeping them throughout the season. And I've got this stack of checks that's about this big. It's really something. I pull it out and I hold it like, whoa, oh my goodness. Look at all that we got this year.
I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do the $10,000 game where instead of getting out $10,000 in cash, you just throw checks up in the air and have them land everywhere.
Maybe I'll do that before I burn them all. That'd be fun.
I remember somebody.
It's absolutely all money. It's so funny. A client of mine, we were playing with what she had decided. She had gone a long time thinking money was very scarce. Money was over there somewhere out there and whatnot. And she decided to say, what if I'm surrounded by money? Because I was mentioning that where I am up here on the 17th floor, I can see money everywhere. There's a Four Seasons that has just been built for $6.5 million. And then the bridge over the Mississippi is being repaired at a vast amount. And then there's a condo building being built over there, and the studio, 700 square feet, is $1.5 million. And that's the one that's right down there by the elevator shaft. It's just looking. So there's a lot of money around here, and the more I noticed it, the more my own money started to loosen up a bit. And so I mentioned this to her, and she decided she was surrounded by money. That was how she wanted to feel, surrounded by money. Well, she started clearing out her office space and found tax returns, checks unbanked, gift cards that she hadn't used, all this stuff in the stuff that was all around her. She was literally surrounded by money. It just didn't look like money in the dollar bill sense. Right. But she proved herself right. She was surrounded by money.
That's and
it's cool. It is a very cool story. It's a cool thing to play with. And it's just like, okay, so how could you be surrounded by what you want? This is what you want is within reach always. Otherwise you wouldn't be a vibrational match. So this is fun to play with.
It also has the advantage of being an example of, I'm thinking of the Abraham Hicks explanations about how this stuff works, that it's all in the vortex, right? It's all kind of swimming around that vortex, waiting to be delivered. Well, it was literally, her vortex was literally her room. Mm-hmm. It was all around the room. It was kind of, in a sense, swimming around the room, just waiting for her to let it in.
Yes, and right to notice it. And to notice it required a thought change, a perspective change. And so, yeah, it's really, we are so much more powerful than we allow ourselves to even play with. So cool.
I've said that before, but I'm going to raise that as a question. Just how powerful do you think we are? If you had to figure out a way to express it, how high is up, I guess?
I don't think we can quantify that. I mean, just like we were just talking now, what we're doing now would have been quantified as magic, and probably had us all burnt at the stake.
That's right. Yes.
For even mentioning it. So. And reality expands as we move towards it. So the future expands as we move towards it. So I don't think there is a quantifiable end game. I think, in my opinion, boredom is the end game. It's like when you can manifest at the drop of a hat and everything works out exactly as you plan, and you have nothing to navigate around or through. Everything's easy. Everything. It's like, that's when you decide to come down from wherever you were and be human for a minute and see what that's like.
Yeah.
Because really, part of the game of life is expansion, and you have to you have to move through things to expand.
True.
I don't think there's a level. I don't think it's quantifiable. I think the only betterment that we need to pay attention to is more than who we were yesterday. That's all.
That's a good way to describe it, because that keeps it within perspective, makes it something that's easy to handle, easy to address. You don't have to think about it a whole lot. Just better than yesterday. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. And then it stops comparisonitis, and it stops all sorts of other unhelpful tendencies that we humans tend to get caught up in.
What you were describing also reminds me of a key Kaya concept. They talk about trying to see things from source perspective. So if you have something that you would normally consider to be a negative, zoom backwards, so to speak, and look at it from the source perspective and see it completely differently. And you can actually get to the point where you appreciate it, where it's actually a good thing. Exactly. Yeah. And you just described beautifully how that happens. You get to the point where you want to go into the mess because you're just so bored with everything manifesting out of thin blue sky,
Yeah, I firmly believe that if you're not playing a big enough game, you will screw up the one you're in just to give yourself something to do.
I think you probably do it anyway. Like, our power is so much bigger than we think, but we didn't come here, like you said, we didn't come here to be bored. We didn't come here,
and we didn't come here to be all powerful either.
Well, it's like, we talk about like playing games, any game that you go to play, it wouldn't be any fun at all if there were no challenges.
Right. It has to have rules and boundaries.
The golf ball was 12 inches wide, wouldn't really be much fun for people. Like, we want it to be difficult, and we expect that when we're thinking of it as a game. And I think that that's what we intended when we incarnated. Like, we wanted to come do something that had some challenging aspects to it. So yeah, I think
it's like people who go and climb rock faces, because they're there.
Or jog in 50 below weather.
That's right,
hang from their fingernails at 500 feet above the ground. Okay, all right, I'll choose some other challenges. You have yours, that's fine. Yeah, it is such an interesting thing. I do think that I think we forget to remember how powerful we are.
But that rule of the golf course, the golf cup being a couple feet wide or something, like, changes the whole game, because now it becomes, what do you mean you didn't get a hole in one? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's like, I always think that they should have raised the basketball post by now, because
the players are so much taller.
Exactly. When you've got somebody who's 9 foot tall and he's doing a slam dunk, it's like, what kind of a challenge is that? It's like, if I was playing basketball, now there's a game, right? Because it's like, it's just like, no, that's not a thing. You get a whole bevy of people at 5 foot tall. Now that's a game.
You could probably make a league around that one. That would actually gain, television interest, I would think.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting, and when we play with just how powerful we might be, I think it loosens up our perspective again. We entertain different thoughts, and when we entertain different thoughts, we get different experiences.
Completely different thoughts, and I like that idea of playing with that, because there's so many things we play with that actually end up being against our own best interest, and we're just like we're tripping over our own feet, so to speak. But when we play that kind of game where we're trying to stretch the imagination, how far can I go? How much can I accomplish, and so forth? It's an entirely different feeling. It's an entirely different experience that follows the feeling. It's an entirely different thought process. Amazingly different.
Yeah.
Very, very exciting too. Something else I want to ask you guys too, because this is kind of like, leading off of the question, well, how high is up? How much the power is, and so forth. How low is the power? How low can somebody go in terms of being a victim, for instance? I mean, how bad can you make it for yourself? Because we dive into this contrast, right? And I get the feeling there are some people, they actually come here to just dive as deep as they can go.
So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, pretty deep. And that energy of victim energy, which we've all experienced, it's very, very heavy for the amount of energy that it is. So we all have the same amount of energy. It's just divvied up, with different levels, right? We may have a lot of energy that's that victim energy or conflict energy. We may have a lot of energy that's creative energy, which is much higher on the energy spectrum. But it only takes a little bit of that lower level of energy to really bring everything down, which is why when you're speaking to someone that's there, it's easier for you to come away feeling bad or, feeling uncomfortable, feeling brought down, than it is for them to come away feeling lifted up. It's because that energy is like so powerful that really, level 1 energy, level 2 energy, very, very heavy and powerful. It doesn't take much of it. So think about a room full of people and everybody's having a good time. It's a party atmosphere going on, and one person shows up that's like really not in that same energy level. It can bring the whole room to a halt, right?
Oh, yes.
You have a whole room of people and everyone's complaining and everyone's upset and everyone's, in a victim mode, and one person comes in that's up. It's not as easy to lift all of that up because it's very heavy energy. So I think, and when you're down there in that really low place, it's very hard to see your way out. As coaches, I mean, I know I've been down there, but as coaches, I know also that when you're speaking with someone who's way down in that level of energy, they will most likely be arguing for their limitations with everything they've got. And every time, if you go the route of trying to convince them otherwise, which is not the right route to go, you'll often get, but no, that won't work. No, because they're really invested. But it's because that energy is so heavy and it's so hard to see the way out. So I think, in answer to your question, like how low can we go? It's pretty low.
Pretty low.
Pretty low. Yeah. And sometimes, that experience, I don't want to be there. It's not a place I like to be. I've told this story before. When I was going through my divorce, what I recognized is that anyone I told would immediately say, "Oh my gosh, that's so terrible. I'm so sorry." Like that was the response. Now, of course, their intention was just to show me support, to show me they cared about me. But the effect was that I immediately went into victim mode. I was just like, poor me, just, they were pouring poor me all over me, right? So I was just like, oh. So I know I was out with a friend one time and we ran into a mutual friend we hadn't seen in a long time. And they said, "Oh, how are you?" And they said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Great." And they said, they asked me how my husband and my kids were. And I said, "They're doing great." And, it was a 2-minute conversation in the middle of a shopping mall, and where everybody says, "We should go have coffee sometime." Yeah, we should. And then, you're never going to see them again for another 5 years. Right. And when we walked away, my friend said, why didn't you say that you were getting a divorce? Like you just completely, and I said, because I realized that, this is not someone I'm going to see all the time. And as soon as I say I'm going through a divorce, they start saying, "Oh my gosh, that's so terrible. I'm so sorry." And it just brings me all of a sudden I'm in that, "Oh my gosh, this is awful what I'm going through." Right. But I wasn't really feeling that way until I got around that energy that was like, and so I just stopped saying it to people because it didn't put me in a good place. There was no need to say it. I didn't lie to them and say, go on and on about how great everything was, but I just didn't bring it up.
But that raises a really good question, though, because there are going to be times when any of us run into somebody that we know, presumably somebody we care about, who is going through something, to let us know about it. What's a good way to respond to something like that?
Well,
How do we
I tell you, you know what? At some point, I was talking to somebody, and for whatever reason, it was the right time for me to say, "Oh, we're not together anymore. We've just finalized our divorce." And she said, "Congratulations, good for you." And it kind of like shocked me because that's not how anybody ever responded. But you know what? It was like so uplifting because I was entering a new part of my life where things were much, much better, right? People don't get a divorce because they think that after the divorce, things will be worse.
No.
And
Very true.
And this person had been through a divorce. So like she understood that, oh, this is a new level for you. Like this is a new part of your life. Things are going to be better. So she said, "That's wonderful. Congratulations. I hope you're doing great." And
Answer.
That was much better. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that that's the thing you should say to anyone who's going through something hard. You know, it's probably not appropriate a lot of the time. But I just recognized in myself that I didn't want to be in victim mode. So, you know, I just decided to not take an action that I knew was probably going to result in me being thrown into the victim hole, right?
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And the thing is that you were aware of how those responses made you feel. And so you stepped away from those responses, right? Because there's no point, you know, if you've got a bruise, there's no point inviting people to lean on it all the time.
Right?
So,
That's
you
it.
know,
That's perfect. Yeah.
but it is also when you do have somebody that's in. So the first piece that I want to say here, and I want to put a caveat, just in case somebody takes being in a bad place as something you chose. There is a lot of people out there that say we choose that. And if that makes you feel empowered, then it's a good thought. If it doesn't, don't entertain it. Do what you can to make yourself feel better. If that's not your feeling better thought, don't go there. Don't agree with people who say, oh, you must have attracted this. Well, no shit, Sherlock, I got it. So, you know, it is,
Thanks for reminding me.
yeah, exactly. So, and it's very gaslighting to say that if somebody's in a really bad place, oh, what did you do to attract this? You know, because they're not there at that point yet. How can I help you? How are you feeling about this? What is your experience now? How are you doing now after all this thing? So somebody will say, I'm getting a divorce. And if I had met Cindy, I would have said something along the lines of, and how are you doing now? Bringing her into present time to say, well, actually, I'm really doing well. I'm so glad that I did this. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad, blah, 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 right? I've got all these adventures happening. And, you know, I had somebody that I hadn't seen for a while, and she had been very badly hit during the pandemic was a bad experience for her because it isolated her so badly. And she ended up feeling in a depressive episode. And, you know, when she told me about this, I could hear the pain in her voice. And it was so asking her, and how are you now? Brings her to this moment. She said, actually, I'm feeling kind of optimistic. You know, I'm able to get out. Whereas if I'd gone, oh, no, that sucks. You know, it's like I would have put her back in that spot. So I'm really careful to say, and this is just the way I work, is to be clear about which version of you I'm talking to. I can't do anything about that version. I am not a therapist. That's their domain. They can help heal your past. I want to know how I can help your present. So I'm very careful to say, what do you need now? Who are you now? How are you now? And move from there.
There was a point where, you know, I was always very self-sufficient. And so I didn't often reach out for help.
Yes.
And at some point in the beginning of it, I knew that I needed to reach out for help because I kind of needed someone to say, oh, that sucks. I'm so sorry. Right.
Right.
And so at that point, I did reach out to family and friends that I knew would support me, that I knew would commiserate with me a little bit. Right. You know, get on my level, and then I knew could lift me up. So, you know, it all just depends on what you're needing. Like you said, Jackie, that's a really nice way to say it. How are you feeling now? What's going on for your now? Like, always bring it into the present. And so that was a way, because we do go through things in life where we are riding that wave where, you know, like, I love that you said, you asked that question and the person said, well, we're actually, right?
Yeah, when I think about it.
Actually, I'm kind of feeling optimistic. So it's like when we go through anything, we will experience all those different levels of energy. So we will be down in there and we will come up, and like being aware of that for our own self gives us the power. It's a place where we can be empowered to ask for what we need. and to orchestrate things in a way where we're going to get what we need. Like I knew at that other place where I was actually feeling really empowered, but I was still kind of fragile, and I knew what I needed. I needed to stay at that level, on that vibe, in that place where I knew what I was doing was right, where I was feeling empowered. And having someone all of a sudden saying, poor you, wasn't going to keep me there. So I made that choice. But there was other time where I made the other choice, where it's like, I really need some support. I am feeling about as low as a person can be. And I need someone to see that and witness it and let me know that you're there for me. So knowing what you need and being aware of everything you're feeling without judgment, right? Without judging it. It's so important. And it's a place of empowerment for us when we can be aware of that and know what's going to support us best.
It's nice to know also that we can actually help somebody by not trying to help them, by simply asking that question. How are you doing right now?
Yeah, because when we rush to fix or rush to help, we are assuming that we know what they need, and we don't yet.
Right.
We really don't. And so
with the information, we still may not know.
Exactly. So giving them a chance to wrap some words around what they might need. I remember when my second baby arrived, and I had a 2-year-old, and I don't think I've ever been that tired in my entire life. Right. And so because they said, a newborn is so hard. Well, the first one's fine because you can sleep when the baby sleeps, but the 2-year-old doesn't give a damn about that. Right. And I was outside in the yard with the small one in my arms and the 2-year-old running around like a headless chicken. And and my neighbor popped over and she said, "Oh, the new one's arrived." And I went, "Yes."
This is not a celebratory
She
one.
looked at me and she said, "How about I sit out here with them for half an hour and you go nap?" It's like, oh my God, can I make you a saint? Like, I'm just going to right this minute, because she had been there. She had 3. She knew what it was like. And she was smart enough to suss out from my energy levels that really what I needed was some time to sleep. And that's all I did. I went inside, I slept for 20 minutes, and I came back outside, and everybody was fine. And I didn't want to slaughter the world. So it was so, we can assume and we can step in to help. We always should offer to help, but we also don't have to assume that we know. We can give the person a chance to ask. And if they can't ask, then do what feels pragmatic and useful.
That's funny. I didn't know your kids were 2 years apart. My kids are 20 months apart. Somewhere there's a picture of me with the second one in my arms, laying in my arms, and I've got the most giant cup of coffee you've ever seen in your life, and I'm looking at the camera and I have these huge circles under my eyes. I don't think I slept for 2 years. It's so awful.
No, I know, right? It's just like, they always say, people say, "Oh, the first baby is so hard." It's like, no, the second one. The second one is, and if you happen to have a third, but the second one after that is definitely, and that's where, I wanted to address this thing about being stuck. I am always talking about seasons with my clients. We go through seasons as humans. We go through a mothering season. We go through a dating season. We go through an empty nesting season. We go through finding a job season or school season or whatever it is. And some of the seasons are really, really hard. But when we think we're stuck there, when we say I'm stuck, we add a brain's opinion to something that we actually want to shift, but we're arguing for it to stay the same. And so, it's like people are so careful. I'm thrilled people are so careful about diagnoses these days. Not I am this, but I have a diagnosis of, right? And so when I say, and I hugely was tied into this, I'm stuck. I'm confused. I used to use this phrase a lot. And then it's like, what if this is just a season? What if this is a lull? What would it look like then? If I had a season of stuckness, it could be a hibernation. It could be cocooning, right? It could be any of these things. But labeling, the way we label things, right from my very beginning, I knew the power of labels. I started calling myself the goddess of lattes at the coffee shop because it made me feel less like a drone, right? And less, it was just a huge thing for me to play with and lighten this stuckness that I felt I was in, because I was having to do retail to pay off a credit card debt that I'd got myself into. And so when I started talking about, and it was flippant first, it was just playing, I am the goddess of lattes. And one of my regular clients went, oh yeah, you are. I was like, oh, if one person thinks I am, then obviously it's true. So I started dressing up, and I was all Chanel beads and fancy hair and all the things. And I was the best dressed barista you ever did see. And very soon I just got to be called goddess. It's like people would call me goddess, and then it would turn up in odd places. Like I'd get cut off in traffic. Well, how would the goddess behave like this? How would goddess Jackie show up for this? And so then I blew the man kisses instead of giving him the middle finger, which made him nearly swerve into a ditch, I want to say. So it was a beautiful piece of karma. But it was, it changed. The label that I chose for myself changed everything. And it's part of role creation. It's like Cindy, she's got she, her magician, and she, her goddess. And it is these labels that we choose for ourselves can unstick you from the ones you feel you've been lumped with, shall we say.
This is why I love so much the idea of the little language tweak of saying, I feel, right? I feel stuck. I feel confused instead of I am.
Yes. Agreed.
Right? Because when we say those two words are very powerful. And when we say I am, even for any emotion, right? I am angry. I am sad instead of I feel angry, because I'm so much more than stuck or angry or confused or sad or even happy, right? It's like, I like to feel those things. I like to say I feel those things instead of I am. And that goes back to your, labeling, right? We label things and then we take it on, like you were talking about diagnosis, right? Someone saying, I have whatever. And it solidifies it, I think, sometimes, instead of just recognizing that we all experience things and we can experience the feeling of being stuck. And I like your reframe too, right? It's like, but what if this was exactly, and I say this a lot because it's one of my favorite affirmations. It was Louise Hay, I'm in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. So when we say, oh, I'm so stuck, there's also this judgment around it that I'm in the wrong place. I shouldn't feel this way. I'm stuck, instead of, wait, okay, I'm feeling a little stuck, but I know that I'm in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. So how does it feel to think that this is actually right? Like everything's working right. And I'm in the part of the process where it feels sticky, but it's a season and it's going to change and things are going to be different. I think it's so much, I don't know, it's a different vibe, right? To look at it that way, to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it unhooks our attention on what isn't working. I must admit, I find the right place, right time. When you're having a really crappy experience, that is a hard stretch. It has been
always
for me.
Helps me, no matter what I'm going to do.
And I'm sure it helps a lot of people out there. But for me, it didn't. It was too far. It was like going, from minus something to way further. It's the same thing as people talking about their future selves. They need to talk about their next future selves. So and I'll just offer this, that instead of the right place at the right time, I would say something like, what if this turns out better than expected? Better than expected is my favorite unsticking tool, because I'm expecting the worst and I'm expecting to stay here forever. Right? This is what stuckness feels like. And then so to say, okay, so I'm feeling stuck, but what if this turns out better than expected? Well, I'm expecting this ghastly scenario. So what might not be as bad as that? And then I can inch myself into thinking, okay, this is a season. Right now, this is how I feel. It's not to say that's how I'm going to feel in the morning.
Yeah.
And then move on from there.
Interesting you're saying that, because I'm kind of thinking back to times where I have felt that stuckness. I've even talked about them here on the program many times. And when you're in that spot, I know the first thing that I recognize, okay, I don't want to use language that's going to reinforce the stuckness, but then I kind of stumble when I'm in that place because I can't think of another way to describe it. How am I supposed to describe this thing I'm in? So that's the first thing that happens. But then once I get past that little bit of language dialogue, then the next thing that happens is, all right, well, how do what is it that I want to feel differently? And I don't know. And then the only thing that comes to my mind is, well, I want to feel better.
Yep. What would feel better? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would feel better?
And even then, and this is where actually differentiation starts to happen, because there's a part of me that says, yes, I want to feel better. And the other part of me that says, I don't dare do that. And now I'm seeing the two things going on there. I'm seeing the one direction toward improvement and the other direction of staying right where I am, because that's where I feel comfortable right now.
That's that lizard brain that never wants to change or
and this is why we need coaches. Can I just mention that? So
absolutely.
Yes.
This is what coaching is for, is to help you untangle those pieces where your brain is trying so hard to keep you safe. And the brain doesn't give a damn about how you feel. It just wants you breathing, and preferably vertical, but that's also an option. So it really is. It just wants you safe. And then, but betterment is growth. Growth is change, and change is inherently risky, and your brain doesn't like risk. So it would rather you stay stuck and believing in the stuckness than consider a change.
Yep.
And so that's the piece that we have to unravel. And that's what good coaches, are skilled at helping you see.
And there is something in here also that's kind of an interesting thing. And that is, you can be in that place of stuckness. Whether or not you're talking to a coach, you can recognize the advantage of climbing out. And on the other hand, recognize the advantage of staying where you are. And in that confusion, you can talk yourself out of a change.
And so many people do.
Out of it entirely. Yeah.
And we have tools for that.
Yes.
This is true.
But that's because your brain will default to the less change option. Always. It knows how to do you as you are. It knows how to be somebody stuck, because it's been stuck for a while, right? It knows how to do that. So it's not sure how to be somebody who's unsticking themselves. So it will drag you back to its familiar point. And so, it does take, it takes application, not always effort, but it does take application. It does take some attention. It takes some time, and it takes some loving kindness with yourself, and judgment free, so that you can work out where this tangle is and unknot it for yourself.
The place we often refer to as our comfort zone is usually not comfortable at all. I like to refer to it more as the familiar zone, because that's what we're really going for, is what's familiar. That's why we stay in crappy relationships, crappy jobs, because that part of our brain that we're talking about, it is certain we can survive those things because we survived it yesterday, or for a month, or for a year, or for 10 years.
Exactly.
And it doesn't know if we can survive this new thing, being single, or being with someone else, or being with a new job. It doesn't know, because it's uncertain. We've never done that before. It's always going to go for the certainty, the certain part that feels safe, but it's usually not the comfort place. We always say, oh, we want to stay in our comfort zone, but it's just the familiar zone, I think, is a better name for it, right?
And I just want to finish off by saying that we talk about being in flow. I don't think it's really important to realize that being in flow is not always comfortable. True. Sometimes we can be in our flow and our zone, and we're creating, and it all feels kind of tingly and a little bit scary and exhilarating, and we're not sure, right? We're uncertain. We're dancing on a new stage, but that's the happy place. That's a really good spot where we're uncomfortably flowing. And that is so cool, because that's where you know you're being pulled into your change as opposed to like striving towards it.
By the way, we have a question in the live stream from somebody who's become something of a regular listener. His name's Gregory, and I think it's aimed at you, Cindy. So I'll bring it to you. How do I cast spells on my neighbors to make them believe I'm the descendant of Michael Jackson?
Best question ever.
Wait, okay. Read that again.
Okay, I'll put it up on screen too so you can see it. He says, how do I cast spells on my neighbors to make them believe I'm the descendant of Michael Jackson?
Why?
Well, I would ask you why that's important to you. I rather do the kind of magic that casts spells on yourself to help you believe that it doesn't matter who you're a descendant of, right? Because that's the kind of magic that you can really control instead of trying to make other people believe things. That's not really all that important. So I would say, why is it important to you to make your neighbors believe that you're anything? What's important is that you believe in who you are and in the power that you have. And that doesn't really have anything to do with who you are or are not a descendant of.
Which is a good thing, actually.
Yes.
But that was an interesting one, because I mean, I know that the way you think about magic is quite different. When I saw that one, I said, okay, this is going to be fun.
Well, I think that every word is a spell. I also think that spells and prayers and blessings and, there's a whole list of words that can all just mean the same thing, right? But our words are really powerful. So we should be, Florence Scovel, one of my favorite old-timey New Thought teachers, said one time that if we really realized how powerful our words were, we would be much more careful with how we use them and with the things that we say. And so I think all of our words are spells. And what if we walked through a day, like tomorrow, with that idea that everything I utter today is a spell, and not just a spell, but a very powerful spell that is going to have results? How would we navigate our words?
We certainly wouldn't say things like, I am stuck.
Right.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Right.
And we come full circle. I love it when that happens.
Yes,
absolutely.
But you reminded me of something, Jackie, that I haven't done in a while. I'm going to have you guys do it here, and that is tell people you're both life coaches. How do they find you? I mean, if now that we put out there that you want to talk to a life coach, we got to tell them how to find the life coach.
Well, you can email me at jacqueline@jacquelinegates.com. That's super easy. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook. And I would love to see you there too. So that would be fabulous.
Yes, same here. Cindy Chavez, CINDIECHAVEZ. You can reach out to me through my website. I don't know, Walt, about our LOA Today app yet, but when the app is running, you can reach out to me there. But you can definitely just email me, Cindy@cindychavez.com. I would love to hear from you.
Yes, me too. I would love to hear from you too.
By the way, we love also taking some of those emails and turning them into shows sometimes.
Yeah, we've done it lots of times. People have emailed us with a certain situation or whatever, and we've done a whole show on it. So
it's fun.
Yes.
In fact, I've even gotten co-hosts that way.
You have?
I'm serious. 3 of my co-hosts right now, 4 of them are ex-listeners, and I think every single one of them at one point sent in a question, which is pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Look how that translated over time, turned into, well, I want to be a part of the show.
Yes.
Yay.
Love it.
Good stuff. All right. Hey, well, for 3 people who didn't have a topic, we did pretty good today.
We always do.
Yeah.
So thank you guys very much. Thank you for the interesting question from the live stream. That was cool. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.